All right, y'all. So just to show you these cartoons that are in history books today, once were in newspapers, right? Nobody knowing that, hey, that's going to be a famous one someday. It's going to be in the history books. And as a person who was a newspaper editor in high school, I was the newspaper editor for our little school newspaper. I remember these kind of things, man. You would put together the stories, we'd do our layouts, and you're like, man, I got a corner here I got to fill. I got some space. Well, one of us would make a cartoon or something like that. And so that's kind of what Nass did. And this is one of his very first cartoons. Now, the person here, y'all, we look at him, his head is literally money. Money is what drives him. He's all about, not the bass. Do y'all even still remember that song, All About the Bass? Okay, good. It's just like, man, it's like if somebody's like 4 or 5 years old, it's like, Mr. D, my parents listened to that. But anyway, he's all about the bucks, right? He's all about the money. That's all he cares about, right? Now, if we zoom in on the caption, right, that's what you call these things, the brains. He is the brains behind the Tammany victory, the Democrats winning at this, or this particular group of Democrats winning at the Democratic Convention in Rochester, New York. So this guy made the Tammany candidates, y'all, beat the other Democratic candidates. So he's the brains behind it. Little do people know, y'all, what a big relationship, and not a good one, as you guys will see, but a very important one, will develop between Thomas Nast, the guy who drew this cartoon. You can see his signature down here, and Boss Tweed would happen. So let's look at Thomas Nast. Normally we don't spend time, y'all, on political cartoonists, but this guy actually made things happen. His cartoons turned out to be so important. And occasionally we'll do this. In fact, one of the things I'm thinking of maybe doing this summer, y'all, I'd like to have a little kind of niche on the internet with some of my things that I teach. And, you know, there's so many great things out there already that teachers do. And I can't add a whole lot to the discussion, but I thought nobody really talks about cartoons very much. Nobody really ever analyzes these things. And since they usually appear on your AP test, at least one or more, I think it's really important that students know, A, the cartoonist, but also know how to analyze those cartoonists. So Thomas Nast, y'all, he was a German American. I think he was born here, but his parents may have been immigrants. Heck, he himself may have been an immigrant, which makes his dislike of the Irish, y'all, kind of ironic, don't you think? Like rain on your wedding day. Anyway, so he went after Boss Tweed. He went after Tammany Hall. And I like this colorized cartoon here, y'all, of Boss Tweed and the police, okay? Now, in cartoons, y'all, as in all art, size tells you a lot about what's more important in it, right? The bigger the object, probably, the more important it is. And it is very symbolic in this case. Now, we got Boss Tweed, who is quite corpulent. Believe it or not, y'all, that was a good thing back then. If you were overweight, it was a sign that you were rich, that you ate well, and you didn't have to work. Because if you worked, you'd be skinny. So Boss Tweed is rich, and he is a fat cat, right? Now, if you look at him here, look at him, y'all. His eyes. He is literally looking down at the cop. Now, what does the cop symbolize? Law, right? The cop symbolizes law, the legal authorities, y'all. He is literally looking down at them. And look at his smile. To me, that's a smirk, right? And when you smirk, that's a sign that you're really kind of disgusted. You really don't think much of anybody like, look at you, cop. Man, you're pathetic, right? He's just looking down at the cop. The cop, y'all, is there any way, y'all, this cop can catch this guy? No. And if you look at the size of Boss Tweed, y'all, and people like Boss Tweed are literally bigger than the law. Now, you got a criminal here, just your average criminal. How do I know he's a criminal? Well, he's got the stripes. He's got a chain and ball to his leg. He's, you know, your stereotypical kind of criminal prisoner of the time. The law is bigger than that guy. but Boss Tweed is bigger than them both, y'all. That is the message you get. And when you look back here at the state prison, or the state's prison as it's labeled, you think that prison could hold this dude? No. He's too big for the law. There isn't a prison built, and he built a lot of them himself, that can hold this guy, y'all. I love this cartoon, and it's pretty simple. Now, here's a picture of Thomas Nast. I like that beard. I've always thought Mr. D probably should have a beard and mustache like that. But anyway, there you go. He made a name for himself and became part of the historical lexicon. But he's much more, y'all, than a political cartoonist. Things that you and I think of as American and always American, they've been with us forever. These were actually cultural icons or images that he created. When you guys think of Santa Claus, and I know Santa Claus is often seen as just a Christian kind of manifestation of Christmas or whatever, but y'all, I've seen Santa Claus in Japan. I've seen Santa Claus in lots of places where they aren't necessarily Christian. It seems to be like it's entered the mainstream of all thought now. When you think of Santa, you think of the jolly old fat man, and I can say fat since, you know, I'm fat, right? So I don't need permission. But anyway, the jolly old fat man with the big belly, with the big white beard, even the red hat on top. There you see the holly leaves. That is his invention, y'all. When you and I think of Santa Claus, the image we have in our brain, our idea of Santa Claus, was one given to us by Thomas Nast, okay? And of course, you've got that famous poem, "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." Clement Moore's famous poem also gives us an idea of Santa Claus. Santa Claus, y'all, comes from a combination of what the Dutch had, what the English Father Christmas had, what the Russians and Germans had, which was Saint Nick, right? But we made him American. We made him our own. Now, when you guys think of the Democratic Party symbol, hopefully you guys know it's symbolized by a donkey, even to this day. Now, I know you see the little circle with the D or whatever, but Democrats, y'all, have been known since Thomas Nast's time as donkeys. That is their symbol, right? Now, you may go, man, Mr. D, of all the animals, man, a donkey? Why don't they go with like Simba, you know? Why don't they go with something bad, like, you know, cool like that? They went with the donkey. Why? It was given to them. Now, Thomas Nast hated the Democrats, so he was going to insult them by portraying them, as he did in this cartoon, as simple, you know, loud but weak asses, because that's the word, y'all. People use the word ass to describe it, a donkey, right? And we don't mean it in the sense that we do today. But that was what they were. So he was literally saying there, right? That was what he was up to. Although that's a weird looking donkey. It looks like it's got like the mane of maybe a lion or maybe a sheep. I don't know. But the Democrats, y'all, when insulted by being called donkeys, they decided to own it, to take ownership and like, oh, you gonna call us donkeys? We don't have a problem with that, because to us, donkeys are amazing creatures. They're strong. They help the farmer plow his fields. They pull our carriages. They pull the factory vehicles that are carrying the stuff to build our cities and all that. There is nothing wrong with being a donkey. Now, for Republicans who he did like, he picked the elephant. I've never really quite understood why. The Grand Old Party, which is the nickname of the Republican Party, maybe because elephants, y'all, they're big, you know, maybe he wanted the size thing there. They're bigger, but also they're kind of slow to get going. But as you guys know, once an elephant gets going, once there's that stampede of multiple elephants, you can't stop them, right? And supposedly elephants have great memories. I don't know if they test them on it, like, you know, hey, elephant, who was our first president, you know, or something. But supposedly elephants have great memories, and they represent that kind of power, but slow moving at times, that kind of thing. And so Republicans accepted that. And Uncle Sam, y'all, when you and I think of the guy with the red and white striped pants, the blue jacket, right, or tuxedo coat, with the hat that maybe is blue, but in this case it looks like it's white with maybe the stars on it. The personification of the United States, Uncle Sam, U.S., right, is where it comes from, is his. So this guy, y'all, is an amazing figure. So hopefully you know him now. Now, as I said, my experience in high school history was pretty awful. But I do remember a couple of things. And I remember this political cartoon, all right? This is called the Tammany Ring, sometimes called the Tweed Ring. Now, the New York Times, as you can see here on the caption, I'll blow it up in just a sec. The New York Times asked the question, who stole the people's money? In other words, who stole the tax dollars? Well, Boss Tweed. Boss Tweed stole the people's money. But not just Boss Tweed, y'all. Everybody. If you look at what these gentlemen are doing, I think they are, yeah, they're all guys. What are they all doing? They're all pointing at the next guy. Even Boss Tweed here, y'all, I think he is pointing. Let's zoom in on him. Yeah, maybe that's a finger. I can't really tell. It's hard to say. But you got people back here. There you say, who stole the people's money, New York Times? And they're all saying, 'twas him, 'twas him, 'twas him. Literally this ring of people, y'all. Remember, ring was the word used to describe basically scandals in the day. You know, there was the whiskey ring and whatever ring, but there was the Tweed ring. What are they all doing? They're all pointing. Whether it's simple workers back here, this may be an Irishman because he looks kind of monkey-like, and I hate to say that, but remember that's what Nass did. You got like your common average worker here. You got rich guys, poor guys. Everybody is pointing to the other. They're all passing the buck, and it is ultimately Tweed that they're going to. There you got the Carpenters group. You've got whatever Axter and Company or something, J.W. Smith's or something like that. So here we go, Tweed's downfall. What happens to get this guy? Well, this guy is going to make it happen. But what really brings Tweed to his attention are these cartoons. Now, Boss Tweed, y'all, this is kind of sad, but he had nothing but contempt for a lot of his voters, the Irish. He thought they were illiterate too. And he even said, I don't care what the newspapers write about me, but it's those damn Thomas Nass cartoons. Because even your Irish people, y'all, even if they couldn't read, they could look at the cartoons and say, this is a bad guy, right? And so Thomas Nass cartoons eventually get the mayor, Samuel Tilden, who's a Democrat, by the way, y'all, to go after Boss Tweed. Political pressure just gets so much on this guy, he has to do something to bring him down. And to his credit, y'all, and it made Tilden a national figure. In 1876, he's going to run for president and probably actually win. But the election's going to be stolen from him. And, you know, I know a lot of people say those kind of accusations today. But in this case, y'all, there is real proof that the election was stolen from this guy, okay? In fact, the rest of his life, Tilden thought of himself as the president. Like, hey, I won the election. No, you didn't. They say you didn't. You're not the president. But I won, you know? But anyway, Tilden, to his credit, y'all, not only got Boss Tweed arrested, but they were able to get one of Boss Tweed's accountants to provide the books, the real books, the cooked books, not cookbooks, but cooked books that prove, y'all, how much Boss Tweed had stolen, who had he paid. And with that evidence, he was able to get a jury, once again, an amazing accomplishment, to try Boss Tweed, find him guilty, and they threw Boss Tweed in jail. Now, he escaped. Now, one like, you know, some movie where, you know, he dug a tunnel and he got out. No, this is how he escaped. Hey, yeah, my wife is like really sick. Could you guys just be real compassionate and let me go visit my sick wife at home? I promise to come back. Well, Doug, guess what? the dude split. I don't even think he ever saw his wife, but he split. He got on a boat, y'all, and he went to Europe. Now, he's living the high life in Europe. Who's going to recognize him in Europe, right? I mean, heck, nobody would recognize him. So he's living in Europe, okay? But he gets caught in Spain. And once again, it was those damn Thomas Nast cartoons. Now, a Spaniard who, from what I understand, didn't even read English, which, hey, no problem there. I don't read Spanish very well. But this guy, y'all, had somewhere seen this particular Thomas Nast cartoon. Now, it portrays Nast, obviously, y'all, as a criminal, right? He's got his prison stripes on. And he's also got what looks like a stick here for beating, for hitting. And what's he got here? Look at these two pathetic little kids, y'all. Now, back then, derogatorily, we would refer to these kind of kids as street urchins. These were poor kids, probably without a father, mother, or if they did, parents didn't have any jobs. They were living on the street, begging for money, stealing, doing whatever it took to feed their bellies, right? And so what's happened? He's grabbed these two kids and he's probably about to whoop them. Now, the Spaniard, y'all, he didn't know all the other stories about Boss Tweed, but he knew, hey, this guy looks like he's a child abuser. And one day, and I think it was on an elevator. Yep, they had elevators then. But he saw Tweed, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's the dude beating the kids. So he let the Spanish cops know. The Spanish authorities brought in the guy for questioning, and they found out he was this man, Boss Tweed, who was wanted for all these other crimes for escape. And so Boss Tweed was brought back to the United States, and this time
there was much rejoicing.
And this time, y'all, he spent the rest of his life in prison and, in fact, died there. The irony of ironies is this was a prison that he had built and had overcharged taxpayers, y'all, like 2 times as much as the prison actually cost. So, you know, life is kind of ironic, don't you think? Like rain on a wedding day. Or anyway, but it's just weird how that happened. Okay, now for this next story, y'all, I want to kind of set it up. And when I typed up the notes, we didn't have this GameStop thing going on. But I want to talk about GameStop because it'll help you guys maybe connect it to what happened on Black Friday 1869. Now, Black Friday, y'all, is anytime you're talking about Wall Street or the stock market and they say black, like there's a Black Monday, there's a Black Tuesday, there's a Black Friday. That means stock prices tumbled. A lot of people got hurt. A lot of people lost money. So let's talk about stocks, y'all, and first of all, how they work. Now, Mr. D doesn't understand stocks, but this may surprise you. I know you guys think Mr. D is incredibly awesome and cool, but Mr. D is, in fact, and I hide it very well, I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. Yeah, I admit it. I collected comic books back in the day. I collected baseball cards. In fact, my brother always used to say he was a millionaire until my mom threw away his comic or his baseball cards. And so, you know, I'd buy comics, I would read them, but I also bought them, y'all, for investing. Ooh, man, I hear that this comic is the next big thing. I'm going to go ahead and get this X-Men comic, right? Ooh, I'm going to go ahead and get this particular comic. And man, I don't want just one copy. I better get me 2 or 3 or 4. Well, other people hear that this is a big comic. So I'm going to have to pay them extra money to get that, you know, maybe the cover price. And that's right. When Mr. D bought his comics, y'all, they were 20, 25 cents back in the day. Maybe I'll pay this guy $1. I remember when the Star Wars comics came out, y'all, I actually paid some people some, you know, decent money, 3 or 4 or 5 times the cover price to get that. Why? Because I imagined that someday they would be worth a lot more money and I could sell it. Now, why do I tell you that story, y'all? Besides the fact it reveals my geekiness. It's because that's how stocks work. You buy them from the company initially in what's called the initial public offering. Once you buy them, they're yours. What your hope is, y'all, is that they will go up in value. And eventually you'll make a decision. I'm going to sell those comic books. I'm going to sell those baseball cards for a lot more money than I paid for them. And then that money will be mine to spend on myself or to invest in more comic books or whatever. That's how stocks work, y'all. That's how buying gold or buying silver works. You buy it at one price, hoping it will go higher. And someday, when you feel like it's time, you will sell it and you will make that profit. Now, until you sell it, it's not really doing you any good. I used to be amazed at people that are like, yeah, I've got $100,000 worth of comic books. I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Do you really have the money? No, but if I sold them, they would be worth it. I'm like, well, first of all, you got to find somebody who's willing to buy them at those prices in the comic book guides, you know, and then they have to come up with the money and buy them. So, you know, it's really, we call them paper profits. In your mind, it's worth X, but, you know, you got to find somebody to buy it. Same thing with stocks, y'all. If you want to buy a stock whose price is going higher, the only way you're going to get people to sell you their stock, because it's a finite quality, is to offer them more money than it's going for. You know, hey, I bought this for $2. I ain't parting with it. How about if I give you $2.50 for every share? Okay, I'll sell it for that. And I'll make me a nice little profit. Okay. All right. So GameStop, y'all. Some of you may shop there, whatever. Some of you buy your games all online, Steam or whatever, and that kind of thing. But apparently some people thought, man, this company is struggling. It might be going down. And they decided to do what's called selling short. Now, that is another way that you can make money. Now, it's kind of complex. And once again, I don't really quite understand it. But let's pretend it's this way. Okay. I think the price of this particular comic book is going to go down, right? It was big at first. People think, oh, man, I need to have that. But the price of it is going down. So what I do is I want to start selling some, but I don't really have any. So what I do is I go to somebody and I say, hey, can I borrow these comics from you? I promise to give them back to you in 6 months. And they're like, cool. All right, cool. Here's the comic books. Well, really, as soon as I get them, man, y'all, I sell those comic books and I make as much money off of selling them as I can. Now, I still owe the dude some comic books, but not for, say, 6 months. In the meantime, the price of those comic books, y'all, they continue to tumble down. Now it's 6 months later. The dude's saying, hey, man, where's my comics? I'm like, just a sec. I'll get them for you. What do? I go out and I buy those comic books at a super low price. Now, I might have sold them for $1 a piece. Now they're a dime each. What do? I go out and buy those comics. I get them back to the guy. He's happy. He's got his comic books back. I have made 90 cents on every single comic book that I did that to, y'all. That is called selling short, okay? Hopefully you can follow that. If so, you're pretty smart. Okay, so GameStop, y'all, their stock was really struggling. People thought it might even go down further. And so a number of people, y'all, basically borrowed stocks with promises to pay them back later, and the idea that it would tumble even further. And in fact, a lot of people believe they were helping it go down. You start bad-mouthing GameStop. Oh, I think their company's going down. Oh, they're awful. This is bad. You contribute to it going down in price so that when that day comes that you got to return the stock, you can return stock that's worth a whole lot less. Okay, you had a lot of people, y'all's age and older. We're talking teenagers, people who were in their 20s and 30s, y'all, people who were on Reddit. They started reading it, okay, and they're like, hey, I don't like them doing this. This is not right. Why don't we all start buying GameStop stock and we'll push it through the roof? Now this is the problem. Now that company that had borrowed that stock, that was hoping to pay it back, or buy the devalued stocks and do that, suddenly they're in a fix, y'all. They got to get that stock back. They got to get it back. And now that stock is costing them even more. It's like I had borrowed these comics and sold them for $1. Now those comics have actually gone up to $2, $3, $5, $10. And now I got to get the dude his comic books back. Crap. I'm going to have to pay somebody $10 to get those comics. I'm going to be losing. Now multiply this by many, many thousands or millions, y'all, and you'll see what was happening to the company that had advised everybody and had bought all these shares of GameStop. Okay, they're in deep doo-doo. Now, in the meantime, a lot of young people are like, oh man, this is awesome. I bought the stock at 10 bucks. It's now 50 bucks. Other people are like, man, I'm going to get me some of that. I'm going to buy me some of that stock. So now it's 100 bucks. It's 200 bucks. It's 300, y'all. It is going through the roof. Everybody's like, man, I don't want to miss that train. I'm going to hop on there, get me some of that. And they're buying it. And as more and more people buy it, y'all, it puts the price higher and higher. Well, eventually Robinhood, which was the company kind of coordinating all these sales, said, man, we can't have this. This is crazy. This is crazy. A lot of people are going to get hurt. Who's going to get hurt? Those people that bought the stock intending for it to sell short, which I don't really feel sorry for, but others said, we can't have this. We got to stop the trading. And they froze the trading. And I don't know where GameStop's price is right now. They've let them start resuming trading, but a lot of people, y'all, liked it. They saw it as David, you know, the little guy fighting Goliath, the big guy. And you know, what did David do? He threw the rock, he hit Goliath and beat him, right? Well, it's sort of like Goliath got mad and said, hey, that was unfair, you throwing that rock at me. You're going to have to use Nerf rocks from this point on, right? It's just not fair. You beating me. I'm supposed to beat you. And so it's gotten very controversial, and a lot of people, y'all, don't like what was done to these folks. That is similar, y'all, to what happened on Black Friday. So two already rich guys, Jim Fisk and Jay Gould, y'all, they wanted to get even richer. Now, the way they decided to do it, y'all, was they were going to do what today we call a pump and dump scheme. You pump up the price really high, and then at the last second, you and only the people in the know, you dump your stock. And when all of you dump your stock, what happens? Prices go plunging down. You've sold your stock for a much higher price than you got. That $1 comic book's now going for $10. You sell your stock, your comics for 10 bucks. Everybody else who maybe bought it at $5, $6, $7, and $8, they get burned when the price of that comic book or stock goes back to the dollar that it's really worth. Hopefully you guys can kind of understand it. At least I can because of my comic book background. Now, so what they do, y'all, is they start buying up all the gold. Now, they get a lot of the gold at some pretty low prices, but just the fact that these two rich guys are buying gold is a signal to the market. Everybody and their mother's mother starts buying gold. What does that do? Gold prices even go higher and higher. All right, so General Grant, our President Grant, y'all, the whole thing, Black Friday, is not going to touch him directly, but it's going to get very close via his wife and also his own brother-in-law. Now, the way the government usually handles, or used to handle, this type of speculation is what you do is you release gold or you buy gold to keep the prices going up or down. Today, our Federal Reserve Board has what's called the Federal Open Market Committee, where they can buy and sell securities to increase, decrease the money supply and try to control these kind of crazy things that are going on. All right, so remember our comic book story that I'm telling you. So let's say Jim Fisk, Jay Gould, they start off and they're buying copies of this comic book, i.e. gold, and they're paying not very much for it. They're buying them for $5, $10, $15, this particular comic book. But because they're buying them, y'all, people see the prices going through the roof. Like, hey, let's say I've got this $15 comic book. I paid $5 for it. Well, I'm not going to let it go unless you offer me some pretty good money. You say, hey, I'll give you $25 for that comic book. All right, man, I'll sell it. And so prices are bid higher and higher and higher. Now, as I said, the way the government usually handled this kind of thing was to release gold into the market. And by adding extra gold, it'd be like adding extra copies of the comic book. Well, hey, why am I going to pay you 25 bucks or 30 bucks for that comic book if I can now buy it back for $5 or $10? So knowing that their whole scheme to make a fortune, y'all, could come unraveled, They had gotten General Grant, President Grant's brother-in-law, in the deal. That is the president's wife's brother, Julia Dent's brother. And he had assured them for X amount of time that they would not release any gold. So the prices would be allowed to go sky high. Kind of like with GameStop, nobody's interfering. We're letting the price just go higher and higher and higher. And people who buy it have all the expectation of, cool, I got me some, I'm going to hang on to it, and I'm going to sell it for more. I got me a copy of the comic book at 50 bucks. I know this comic book's going to go to 100. I'm going to hang on to it and sell it then. Now, of course, people see this going on, and everybody and their mother's mother start buying gold as well, too, inflating the gold prices higher and higher. Now, Gould and Fisk, they kind of bought their gold. They got copies of the comic book, y'all, when it was 5 and 10 bucks and 15 bucks. But now that comic book is worth 50, 100, $150. Some people are paying $150 expecting it to go to 200. People are paying 200 expecting it to go to 250 and 300, y'all. So you have this crazy thing going, just as you did for GameStop. Everybody's buying the stock, even at prices much higher than that stock is really worth, y'all. It's called overvalued stocks. The company, if you add everything they have, is not worth the value of all the stock that's out there, okay? Now, on Friday, September 24th, hence the term Black Friday, and you kind of heard a gong there, y'all. What happens is the government finally releases the gold. Now, it's a drop in the bucket today. $4 million is more like a drop in the ocean. But in those days, $4 million worth of gold, y'all, that is enough to crash the market. So what happens is people that paid $50 or $100 for that comic book, for that gold, now people are like, why should I buy it from you, dude? The government just released tons of copies of that comic book or copies of that or that gold. I can buy it for 20 bucks. I can buy it for 25 bucks. And so what happens, y'all, is if I'm going to sell mine and I'm worried that, oh my gosh, it's going to go down even further. I paid $75 for that comic book, for that gold. Man, it's going to go down, baby, back to 10 or 15. I better sell it when I can. Well, if I offer it for 75, some dude or dudette may buy it. If I don't, if I'm like, well, I'm going to offer it for 50. Even though I paid 75 or 100 for it, I'm going to offer it for 50 because getting $50 back on that comic book or that gold is sure better. Even though I'm losing 25 or 50 bucks on it, it's a whole lot better than it going back to $5 or $10 and me losing everything. Now remember, Gould and them had bought it when it was cheap. Think $5 or $10 comic book. But now it is through the roof. Now, they would have been burned if they had not known that this was happening. So what happens, y'all, is they know the gold is about to be released. Everybody still wants gold. They don't know the government's about to do this. So they cash out, y'all. They sell their copies of the comic book, the gold, at super high prices. People buy it. And then boom, here comes the gold from the government. Prices tumble. And when the prices tumble, y'all, people who had bought it at, let's say, $75 or $100 now are only able to sell it for $5 or so dollars. So Fisk and Gould, y'all, made a profit. They got rich, like Rick James rich, over this whole thing. But everybody else who had bought it at the higher prices, whether it was $20, $25, $50, or whatever, those people got burned, y'all. They were all sitting around like Mr. D was with his copy of Howard the Duck's comic book that I paid a lot of money for, whose price tumbled after the crappy movie came out. And I'm like, wow, great. I paid this for it, but it's really worth this. If I had known that the movie was going to be crappy, see, I could have sold it at a high price like I paid for it, maybe even made a profit. But as such, I got stuck with these stupid comic books. Real story, by the way. Okay, so why did Mr. D spend all this time on it? Well, I think because, A, you guys have maybe heard the story of GameStop. You know, you guys play games. I get it, right, man? I admire you for being able to do that. I know it's an addiction for me. If I do that, I'm probably not going to do anything else, y'all, because there are so many awesome games out of there. I would get hooked and like, that's it. Mr. D's going to do nothing for the rest of his life but play these awesome, cool games. And so, but also, y'all, because nothing, no single event in Gilded Age history probably shows the avarice, right? The greed that Black Friday and Jay Gould and Jim Fisk job is, what they do that day. These guys were already rich, y'all, but they wanted to be uber super rich. You know, people say you never can have enough money. Well, I think you can, and I would like to, find out someday. But the thing is, they were already rich, but they wanted to get richer. And it really shows you, y'all, it was sort of like, screw everybody else. We're making money. We don't care if thousands of people lose everything. And by the way, if you ever invest in the stock market, and it is kind of gambling, remember, don't ever invest more than you can afford to lose, right? There is never really a sure thing. If there's a sure thing, it's probably illegal. And this is another problem too. And you'll see this happen with the Great Depression that we'll talk about later. You have this great bubble in the 1920s when stock prices are going through the roof. Everybody, people that know nothing about the stock market, y'all, are buying stock, okay? Because, hey, it was $50 yesterday. It's 60 today. It'll be probably 70 tomorrow. I can sell it in a week and make me a nice little profit. But what they also were doing, and this was true on Black Friday, y'all, is people were borrowing money. Let's say I want to buy $10,000 worth of gold or stock or comic books, but I don't got $10,000. What I do have is maybe $1,000. So the bank, y'all, agrees to give me the other $90,000. I borrow it from them with the intention that, hey, price is going to go up. I'll sell my stuff. I'll pay the bank off, and I will make me a nice, tidy little profit off of this. But for that to work, y'all, prices of stock, comic books, gold have to continue going up. If they tumble, if they really fall, I still owe that money. I borrowed $90,000, let's say. But sadly, the stock, the comic books, whatever I own now, y'all, are only going for, say, $20,000. I still have, even if I sell them right then, y'all, I'm going to have to come up with the other $80,000. Now, if enough people like me make that mistake where we borrow from the banks themselves can go bankrupt. And that can happen, y'all. Banks don't keep the money you and I put in it. They only keep a little bit. They loan the rest out. So if they have loaned that money out to you and me and we can't pay them back, they don't have that money sitting there. And what will happen is what's called a run on the bank. This happened a lot during the Great Depression. If you guys have ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life, one of Mr. D's favorite Christmas movies, although I didn't watch it this year, a rumor comes out that, hey, this bank is hurting. It's about to go out of business. Well, you're like, man, I got $10,000 in that bank. Now, in the old days, if the bank went bankrupt and you had money in it, you were SOL, shoot out of luck. You were just out of it. Now, today, we protect your money up to several $100,000. You got more than that in there, and the bank goes, well, hey, too bad, but hey, at least you got your other money. And so, y'all, when people started making runs on these banks, taking out the money they did have that was still there before somebody else could get it, like, hey, I want all my money out of here. Well, that means there's even less for the next guy, and eventually they run out of money. Plus, they've got all these debts out there, and people just have to sell the stock. And when people sell the stock, y'all, at a low price to get some money back to recoup what they lost on the comic book or whatever, what does that do? That just deflates the value of it even more. Hey, man, they're selling these things for nothing. Man, these comic books were $50 last week. Now they're down to $5. Man, if I want to sell it, I'd better sell it for $4 or $3. And then they're like, hey, don't pay $5 for it, man. It's going to $4. It's going to $3. So you have to keep lowering it, which means you're losing more money. The banks are getting less money back. And of course, banks, y'all, loan money to businesses, especially when business is kind of bad. And so with a lot of people losing money, and you guys have seen this during Corona, right? When a business closes, y'all, their employees are out of work. Well, they didn't have stimulus packages to help them then. So they're out of their money. And so they're not going to go buy stuff, which means more businesses go bankrupt and lay off more people. And it's a vicious circle, y'all. More and more people like, hey man, I can't make my house note. All right, well, the bank's going to take your house. Well, great. Nobody has the money to buy that house, right? And so the bank takes a loss on it. When businesses can't pay back their loans, more banks go out of business. And so one thing impacts another, y'all. And so what they didn't understand, well, maybe they understood it, they just didn't give a beep beep, was by doing this and crashing the system, they were hurting everybody. Okay. And so we'll stop right there. But Black Friday, perfect example of the greed of the Gilded Age. I'm going to make my dinero. I don't care what happens to everybody else. All right. You guys have a great day. Take care.